Welcome to Submarine Live. Wonderful to have you with us, and a very good morning, good afternoon to students joining us from. We have the USA, UK, and Canada. Welcome. This is a live investigation looking at submarine shape. So we'll be looking at forces and how those change depending on the shape of your submarine. And we have some shout outs to do. We have Jack Jacta Intermediate School. Hi to everybody watching from Jack Jacta. We have Bauer Elementary School. Hello to all the students there. We have St. Bridget's Primary. Hi there. Big wave to you. And Riverside Public School. Wonderful to have you all with us. Now, Submarine Live is a week-long connection and investigation of life and science involved in submersible exploration. We have two types of sessions. We've been doing submarine Q&As with the Necton First Descent team. We've had great chats today with Chief Submersible Officer Robert Carmichael and Necton Chief Scientist Lucy Woodall, Dr. Lucy Woodall. And it's been really wonderful hearing their experiences as they are investigating the uncharted depths around the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean. They're just off the coast of an island called Aldabra, if you want to have a look at that on your maps at the end of this session. Now, live investigations, this is part of AXA XL Oceans Education. We're looking at some of the STEM topics behind submersible exploration. And so this is a little investigation we're going to be doing today together. We're going to be looking at different shapes of submersibles, submarines. Just before we start, actually, I use those two words there. So technically, a submarine is an underwater vessel that can operate independently, and a submersible is an underwater vehicle that needs a support ship or a mothership for it to work. And actually, technically, the vessels, the submersibles being used by the Necton First Descent team at the moment. And the reason why the Necton team are using those submersibles is twofold. First of all, if we think about exploring the ocean, now we can get to a certain depth by scuba diving. So that is going with a air tank on your back and the breathing equipment down to a depth of about 30 meters. Now beneath that you can work with technical divers. Technical diving might take you down towards 100 meters, but to go any lower and to discover what is in those depths requires submersibles and other technologies. Submersibles going down to 250 meters on this expedition, and it's called First Descent because this is the first time people have been down to these depths to see what is there. Now, I think we've got some footage of the Triton submersibles being used on Necton First Descent, and we can see that amazing acrylic pressure hull. It's made out of acrylic, a type of plastic, about 8 centimeters thick, and it allows a wonderful 360 degree view of the underwater world. Other tools that you could use, a bit like this ROV, remotely operated vehicle, and I'll just hold that up so you can see. So you can see here that at the front of this is a camera. Now the team are also using an ROV, and you get a fairly small field of view. So if you're using this, you can only sort of see what's in front of you. You can point it up, down, left, right, but you can't track what's going on behind you, above you, to the side, or underneath. So those 360 degree pressure hulls allow you to see all around and give you a far better sense of what is happening in the underwater world. Just put video ray down there for the rest of the session. So we're going to do a little bit of a talk about some of the science involved in deciding what shape your submersible or submarine should be. We're then going to do a little investigation together to see how we can learn more about the different forces that act on the submersible, and then we'll have a chance to have a Q&A afterwards talking all about deep ocean exploration, submarine design, and also some of the things that the Necton First Ascent mission has been investigating, discovering, and enjoying in the deep ocean in the Indian Ocean. So, just to go through some of the things you need for this investigation. You will need your mini ocean. I've got a big clear box here filled with water. If you have measuring cylinders in your classroom, you can also use that. You will also need a lump of modeling clay or blue tack or something like that you can make into shapes. We have used stuff like Play-Doh in the past, and that gets horribly slimy if you put it in water, so we probably advise against using Play-Doh. And what we're going to look at are forces, and we're going to look at unbalanced forces. Now I'm just going to take a little ball from this modeling clay here. And obviously we're going to have this go through the water. This is our submersible. I'm going to think about the forces that act on it. Now I'm just going to let go. And we can see we've got a force called gravity. And that is pulling the submersible down. Now obviously, if you had a submersible that fell like this and hit the bottom, that would be fairly uncomfortable for the scientists involved. So we need to look at how we want our submersible to move through the water. And we've got to think about the other forces that may act on it when it is moving through the water. And we're going to look at a force called upthrust or some resistance. How does the water act? And so is there an opposite force that might slow our submersible down? And we can think about other objects that move through the water or move through the air and how they're designed. Now, let's think about those different types of objects that move through the air or move through the water. We might have an aeroplane, and think about how an aeroplane is designed. Does it want to reduce the force from the air on it, that air resistance, or does it want to have a lot of air resistance? With submarines, if we think about those submarines we might have seen in films, that typical sort of black, sleek shape, how are they designed? Do they want to move fast through the water, or do they want to move quite slowly and steadily? And then think about what our scientists might need. So it's not speed that they're looking at, rather they want a nice steady platform to do their science. So what we're going to look at today is how can we design the shape of a submarine that will move slowly and steadily through the water. And so we're going to think about what shape that should be, and think about the different types of shape that we may have seen ourselves. So I've got here 4 balls of modeling clay, and what I'm going to do, I'll just roll these into balls now. I'm going to think about some different shapes that I want to investigate, and I'm going to see how they behave in my miniature ocean here. Let's roll these all into balls. So we're going to think about the different shapes that we want. And I'm just wondering, first of all, is what happens if we have a shape that is a bit like those submarines you see in films. So if I have that sort of normal submarine shape, like a tube Here, I've got a spare bit of modelling clay. I'll just make the sort of conning tower that goes on top and put some little sort of fin shapes on the side to make it a bit more realistic. Stick those towards the back. That's what I remember from the last film I saw. Let's hold that up. Here's my excellent submarine model made out of red modelling clay plasticine. So that's one of the shapes I want to investigate. How does this one behave? Would that shape give a good, steady platform for our scientists? Gem's behind the camera, making all this happen. Are there any other shapes I should be investigating for this? Try just a ball. So we're going to have, if we just had a ball, no motors, no nothing, just a ball in the ocean, how would that help? Earlier you were suggesting a pyramid, so a pyramid-shaped submersible. So you can make how do you make a pyramid-shaped submersible? I suppose it's a bit like, well, that's more like a cone, but let's see what we can do. Pyramid-shaped submersible coming right up. Use the edge of the table here just to give it some sides. Bit like that. Pyramid-y type submersible, so we'll see how that one works. I'm going to go for, if you imagine looking at the bottom of one of the Triton submersibles, I'm going to go for a sort of like a pancake shape, a sort of flat surface. And see how that works. Go for a sort of pancake shape there. I'm going to see which of these shapes give us a good platform. And we're probably going to see, as we drop these into our ocean, to see how they go down, to see what kind of force, upward force, that we're going to get from the water. Is it going to differ depending on the different shapes we drop? So let's just do a test first. So we've made sure that it's a fair test because we've used the same size of ball for each of these. So the only thing we're changing is the shape. We're not changing the mass of the ball that we're using. And we're going to see what might happen. So I'm going to get the stopwatch up. Here we go. And I am going to start off by dropping the submarine shape one in. Don't drop it from a height. Have the close to your shape close to the surface of your ocean. And I'm going to go. Oh, I managed not to be able to press stop early enough. That I've got as 0.47 of a second. Right, let's try another one. So you've got to remember these, that's 0.47. Someone noting that down somewhere. Okay, reset. So which way up are we putting the pyramid submarine?
Point down.
Point down. Point down. Here we go. Pyramid submarine. 0.30 of a second. Jam, we now have the ball submarine, the famous ball submarine. And I think a question I saw, we're going to talk about ball shapes submersibles in a little bit. So ball shape, reset, missed that one. That again is 0.3 of a second, so we're tied between balls and pyramids in terms of our submarine shape. And last but not least, I'm going to move these ones out of the way. Is the one that most closely resembles the sort of view, if you cut across, of the submersibles on the expedition. So that is 0.87 we have there. So just wondering, in your classes, what you have found out. So I'm just going to have that one again and compare it to our traditional submersible shape as we drop these through the water. So I'm reckoning that if we look at these head on, there is more area on this one than there is on this one. So I'm reckoning that it matters how much area you have, and that's how much upthrust you've got affecting it. So the more area you have. I'm going to keep this one the same. I'm going to take, I'm going to take your ball submarine. I'm going to see if I can make an even bigger area to see whether that's true. So keep on investigating. Keep on trying. I'm going to see if I can make an even bigger, more difficult when it's wet, and I managed to make a hole. Let's close that hole. So even bigger. Not the roundest shape I've ever made in my life, but we can see that the area is bigger. Try and close that hole up in the middle there. Oh, another one's come. Not doing very well here. I'll start again. So looking at the area of these two shapes, an even bigger one, and let's test these two. So my hypothesis is that the bigger the area, the slower the descent. Nice, slow, steady descent for our science team. Aha! So, I think that shows that I've proved my hypothesis. So when we're designing a submersible for science, we're not looking at having that streamlined shape. Certainly if you're using it in the Navy, you might want to move fast through the water. But for science, we want that nice, steady descent. Now if I put our pressure hull on the top, you can probably see again that slow, steady descent through the water. And that's one of the reasons why the submersibles that you've been seeing as part of Necton First Descent aren't these sleek shapes, but instead are these really nice steady platforms for science. Now the submarine pilots often have to position, and I think if we've got some footage of a submersible on the Necton mission, and it is just beside a wall, deep underwater, holding a steady position, and they might be using video and might be collecting samples. Now, it is not like being in a bathtub. There's a huge amount of currents going around, so you have to have an incredibly skilled pilot, but being able to hold that nice and steady as a science platform to be able to investigate the life and the ecology down in the depths of our ocean. Now, wondering how you guys got on. For me, it's a fascinating area where you think that a submersible should be one shape, and then it comes across that in fact different shapes are suitable for different jobs because of the way that the forces act on them. So we've got gravity coming down, the upthrust, the resistance from the water pushing up, and having that large surface area really, really helps. So I've got a couple of questions here and looking forward to answering more. we have Eniola from Camden. Has the shape of the submersibles evolved over time? Now, the first submersible that really went down in bathysphere in 1930 with Beebe Barton off the coast of Bermuda. And that definitely was just sort of like lowering a big sort of, sphere down through the water. Now, we've had two sort of like chains of change for submarines and submersibles over the course of time. We've had increased use by navies, and those have had a sleeker shape, going to the depths of the ocean, this sphere. If you look at the bathyscaphe Trieste, and that went down the first time to full ocean depth in 1960, full ocean depth nearly 11 kilometers down. That was with Don Walsh and Jack Picard as part of that expedition, the Necton, Project Necton, from where the Necton mission has taken its name. That was a sort of like a broader shape, almost like a sort of fat sausage going down there. And then in recent years, with the development of science, use of submersibles and submarines, we've seen much more importance placed on the ability of scientists to see the underwater world. So that acrylic pressure hull, 8 centimeters thick, it's designed so it sort of optically disappears when you're underwater, so you feel that there's no barrier between you and the underwater world. So different shapes, different purposes, different technologies have evolved over time and taken submarines and submersible shapes in different directions. We have Zach from Walthamstow. Why is the shape of the submersible so important? Any vehicle or any tool that you use, you want, especially with movement through air or through water, you want that shape to be best for the job you want to do. So as you're moving through any fluid, if you feel like that, you can feel the wind, you can feel resistance. If you move your hand through water, you can feel the resistance of the water. So how do you want those forces to interact with your vehicle? And how do you best want to design something that takes account of those forces? If you're moving and there's resistance, so how do you work with that? You see most times that if you want to be speedy, whether it's cycling, whether it's an aeroplane, you want that sort of what's called a streamlined shape. For other reasons, if you've got to have a parachute, you want to float gently. So obviously you have that large surface area, because obviously having a parachute is about moving slowly rather than moving fast through the air. I think if you had a parachute that moved you at speed through the air, you'd be fairly disappointed at the end of that journey. So different shapes for different jobs. Rupert in Camden wanting to know, what do you think is the most important element of the submarine designs? Rupert, as we've been discussing, and I think it's a principle of good design and design thinking, is that you have to think about the user. What does a user want? And so take into account what the user wants and then design your product or your idea or your digital service around that. When it comes to submarine design, different people will want different things. The head of a country's navy may want one thing, a research scientist in the Indian Ocean will want another. So when we see these pressure hulls, the steady platform, the scientific surveying tools, those are all things that have been designed with a scientist in mind. So in terms of elements, it's a user-first design thinking process. Jack, the students would like to know, where am I? I am in an amazing sort of building. This is a marine manufacturing facility, and they make all kinds of amazing underwater tools so that you can communicate underwater, you can track how the Earth's surface is moving, you can send data transmissions via LED light so that you can do live video transmissions from underwater. Very sadly, this time I have not been able to get out on the Necton mission. They have been too remote for me to be able to visit them for Submarine Live, but we had a great time bringing them in via satellite link and talking to them just earlier today. And in fact, we've got 4 more Q&A sessions with them this week. They are, in fact, I think over 1,100 kilometers from the nearest international airport, so quite a struggle to get to them for Submarine Live. But we're doing these live investigations from Sonodyne HQ, this amazing marine manufacturing company. Again from Jack Jacter, how slow and smooth can the smoothest, slowest vessel go? That almost sounds like a tongue twister. So thank you for reading that out live on air. It's a really good question. So, I mean, with vessel movement, especially ship movement, there is something that is called, so first of all, you're moving your vessel through the water, you can switch the engines off, and you're not producing any force yourself, any propulsion yourself. So you should really stay still. But the ocean isn't a swimming pool, it's not a bathtub. There's wind, there are currents, there's wave action, all moving around. So to stay in the same place actually takes a lot of effort. And there's some amazing systems called dynamic positioning, where a vessel will have thrusters around it, and that will mean any time it senses it moves, it will auto-correct that so that it's staying in exactly the same position, irrespective of the currents, the winds, the wave action. And that's super important if you have instruments or other types of research equipment beneath the water, so you don't drift too far away. And really important if you have those tethered to the expedition vessel, to the surface vessel, such as an ROV, a robotic submarine, to make sure that the wire that is attached to the submersible doesn't snap off, to the ROV doesn't snap off because the surface vessel is too far away. Right, where are we? So Jack Jacter, students again, how heavy are the submersibles? They're about 4 tons each. So that's pretty heavy, and it takes a very experienced crew to do the submarine launch and recovery, and that's using a crane to take them off the deck and get them into the water for each of the dives that they do. And they're diving for between 2 and 5 hours at a time. How heavy is scuba gear? How heavy is scuba gear? Probably about between 15 and 20 kilos all in. So a lot less than a submersible, but of course you're limited then to exploring just the top 30 meters of the ocean. And the amazing thing about using submersibles, these ones are Triton 1002s, allowing you to go down. They're rated down to 305 meters, but for safety reasons, limiting it on this expedition at 250 meters down into the ocean. Jack Jacter students ask, what is the best shape for speed? I am not going to answer that question for you. I hope that you will be able to work that out yourself by doing a little investigation and by thinking about some animals that are designed for speed in the water, and also maybe some sort of human-made objects. So think about fast objects and how they are designed and what shapes are best for that. So I'm going to make you think for that one. Come back, and hopefully I'll get updated on this live chat I have here with the team in London. So I'm going to see what your ideas are in just a little bit. Have I ever been in a submarine? Very sadly, not yet. I have been on 2 submarine-based expeditions, but I have been focusing on the education side, making sure that we can derive more education materials about submersibles. So fingers crossed on the next mission, I'll be able to go out and go down in a submersible. I'm really looking forward to it. Everyone we've been speaking to this week from the Necton First Ascent expedition have been raving about how amazing it is to go down. They're describing it like being inside a fishbowl looking out, the calmness of it, the amazing change in light. When you're down at 250 meters, it gets so dark. And then we've got some footage of being down at 250 meters. There we are. And you know, you go down and it gets bluer and bluer and darker, and then suddenly you put the lights on and you have this incredible underwater world, this otherworldly experience. So I can't wait. I've been badgering the team. So anyone want to come with me? Should we try and get a school trip on a submarine? I'm not quite sure whether that washed, but we can definitely ask. We'll see how we get on with that. I think we should do a school trip to a submarine. 6S, does submarine shape design try to emulate things seen in nature? And if so, what adaptations does deep sea creatures have that make them suited to the environment? So that's a brilliant question. There's a design principle called biomimicry. Biomimicry basically means that we take our ideas from nature, or take ideas from nature and see how they can be employed. Now, with the submersibles themselves, there isn't so much biomimicry involved, but if you look at the streamlined shape of a shark, we can definitely see how that is echoed in a number of faster vehicles, both on land and in the water. We can see that streamlined shape often being used in more traditional submarines, as the black submarines will get used for defense purposes. And then if we go further down and we look at some of the adaptations that deep ocean creatures have, and really sort of even deeper than the Necton team is exploring, we see something that really fascinates me, which is bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is where animals create their own light, and they do that for a number of reasons: for hunting, to attract prey, for defense, to confuse predators, and also for finding a mate. But I think you may have seen, I think even in Finding Nemo, there's an example of a creature using bioluminescence, using this light generated in the dark deep for attracting prey, and that's the anglerfish, with almost that sort of fishing rod type sort of protuberance from its head, and that glowing lure to attract the prey towards it. So definitely, making your own light is an amazing adaptation for those creatures that live in the deep. From Jack Jacta, what are these submersibles looking for or finding? It's a really good question, and I'm going to sort of skirt around it because there isn't a specific thing they're looking for. It's not like a sort of treasure hunt in that sense. The ocean is very, very unexplored. So if you're just using scuba gear, you can only really do the first 30 meters. And the reason why this expedition is called First Ascent is because the scientists are going down for the first time. So people are going down to these parts of the ocean for the first time. And so you're really just doing a broad range of science work. You're doing transects, so you're taking a video and you're looking very, very carefully and filming these areas of the ocean. You're taking physical samples with a grabber. That might be a sponge or a soft coral or other types of animal that live on the bottom. you are using methods to do 3D mapping. You're looking at the difference in ocean chemistry. You're really just trying to get a picture of this part of the ocean. And because we don't know what's there, everything you gather is just new. We didn't know what was down here until the next and first ascent team have gone out to have a look. So that's truly, truly exciting. And some of the images you've been seeing from the expedition, this is the first time we've seen what's down in this part of the ocean. Jasmine from Harlow, is the size of the submersible limited? If so, why? Jasmine, that's a really great question. The size of the submersible is limited in some ways, is you don't want it too big. The bigger the submersible, the bigger the vessel you need. And if we just get this sort of, we get a sense of the size of the vessel, if we sort of have a sort of flyover of this, and you can see there's two small submersibles. We can see the crane getting them in and out of the water. But if you have this huge submersible, then you're going to have a bigger expedition vessel, and it makes these things more costly and more complex. So you really need two people. You need a pilot and a scientist or co-pilot in there. You can get slightly bigger submersibles. There's no reason why you can't go bigger and bigger, but it's really a balance of size and practicality and cost. So those are some of the factors to think about. Maddie from Brent would like to know what equipment is there on a submersible. Maddie, great question. You've got a sort of different types of equipment. So first of all, you've got the basics of the thrusters to be able to move, the ballast tanks to change the buoyancy of the submersible. We're looking at submarine buoyancy tomorrow in our live investigation, so do join us for that. And then you have safety equipment, so you've got to be able to breathe. So you need something that takes the carbon dioxide out of the air. So as we breathe, breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide, we obviously don't want those levels to change. We want the same levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide inside the submersible. So there's oxygen tanks putting in oxygen, and then there are scrubbers taking the carbon dioxide out of the air. And then we come on to the scientific equipment. That can be anything from video cameras to create stereo images, 3D images of the ocean floor. It can be a directional high definition camera. It can be a grabber. It can be a set of what we are known as Niskin bottles, and those are sort of small tubes, a bit like a drain pipe, and those collect water samples at different depths. So those water samples can then be analysed. So a whole host of scientific equipment on the front of the submersibles. Oliver in Islington, how do I become a submersible pilot? What a great question, and really great to use the word pilot there, because you do move in 3 dimensions. So pilots moving in 3 dimensions and drivers moving in 2 dimensions on a flat surface. To become a submersible pilot, there is a training course you can go through. You work on a simulator, and then you do some test dives to become a qualified submersible pilot. The pilots on this expedition, Randy and Robert and others, heaps of experience they have over numerous dives. So really useful skills. Engineering skills are really useful because you have to be aware of everything, maybe do some fixes underwater, do some repairs when the submersible comes back up to deck. Huge amount of work to do there. So engineering, I would say, a love for the oceans. Speaking to Robert this morning, he was saying how he got into scuba diving first off and then moved into submersibles. And he has been working at this for 35 years to finally be running a submersible company. So it's a long old road, but get scuba diving and get into engineering in order to increase your chances of becoming a submersible pilot. 6S asks, what are the ROVs and submersibles powered by? Do they need charging every evening? 6S, yes they do. So submersibles have batteries inside them, large batteries, and those do need recharging before every dive. With the ROVs, it's a cross between, you've got batteries inside that as well. You've got this link here, and that's often, for some it is for power, but it's mainly for data from the video and for controlling it as well. So you've got those, but electric. So you hear about diesel submarines and nuclear submarines. Those are mostly the ones, those are the ones that are used by the navies around the world rather than by the scientists. So it's battery powered for us. Wow, what a really amazing range of questions you've come up with. Everything from submarine shape to how do they work underwater, size, speed, all these different things. So thank you so much for being part of this live investigation looking at submarine shape. If you have enjoyed this, do take part in the rest of Submarine Live this week with our Q&As from the expedition team, and a submarine buoyancy live investigation tomorrow. We'll be looking at how you can stay neutrally buoyant. Big thank you to the Necton First Ascent team for joining us during the Q&As, and to AXA, Excel Oceans Education, and Sonodyne HQ for hosting us here. If you are enjoying Submarine Live, if you enjoyed the sessions today and earlier this week, please do join us as well for Arctic Live, where we'll be broadcasting live from a research station in the Arctic. That is from the 1st to the 8th of May, and you can sign up at encounteredu.com/live. Thank you so much again, and it's a bye-bye to amazing students. Jack Jacta, and I was going to get all of your Jack Jacta. I've got Barrow Elementary School, St Bridget's Primary, and Riverside Public School. Thank you. It's goodbye for now. Bye-bye.